So picture this. It's May 29th, 1913. All the fancy high society folks in Paris are dressed to the nines for new ballet. They're expecting, graceful dancers, beautiful music, the usual. But what they got was a full-blown riot. Yeah, a riot. Today, we're going to dive into how Igor Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring turned into one of the biggest and honestly one of the most important scandals in the entire history of music.
I mean, that's the real question here, right? It sounds totally wild to us now. How could a bunch of music and dancing actually start a riot? But back then, in 1913 Paris, this performance seriously pushed a very sophisticated, very proper audience right over the edge. So let's get into what exactly went down on that completely chaotic night. Just try to imagine it. You're in this gorgeous, glamorous theater in Paris, but instead of quiet, polite applause, there's just yelling, people are booing, they're shouting "shut up" at the stage, and there are actual fistfights breaking out in the aisles. The poor dancers couldn't even hear the music. Their choreographer, Nijinsky, had to stand in the wings literally screaming the rhythm counts at them just so they could stay together. This wasn't a performance anymore. It was pure, unadulterated chaos. So to really get why this happened, you have to realize that this ballet didn't just bend the rules, it shattered them. Every single one. It wasn't just one thing that set the audience off. Oh no, it was a complete and total assault on everything they thought art was supposed to be. Yeah, it was really the combination of all these things that was just so explosive. You gotta remember, these audiences were used to things like Swan Lake, all graceful, elegant, floating dancers. They showed up expecting beauty. And instead, they got this music that sounded just harsh, dissonant, primitive. And the dancers, they weren't gliding, they were stomping. Their feet were turned in, they were doing these heavy, jerky jumps. And the story? Not a fairy tale. It was a brutal, pagan ritual about a young girl who literally dances herself to death. So for the audience back then, this wasn't just a bad ballet. It felt like an attack on the very idea of art itself. So who were the mad geniuses behind this beautiful disaster? Well, it was a trio of Russian visionaries, each one a complete genius, and they all deliberately set out to make something the world had never, ever seen or heard before. Okay, so first up, you have the impresario, Sergei Diaghilev. He was the ultimate showman, and he's the one who commissioned the whole thing for his super edgy company, the Ballets Russes. Then he got the young composer Igor Stravinsky to write this groundbreaking, primitive music. And finally, to create the moves, they brought in the legendary dancer Vaslav Nijinsky, who basically had to invent a whole new style of anti-ballet, all angular, heavy, and totally raw. All right, let's dig into the music itself. We'll start with the thing that was probably the most shocking part for that audience, the rhythm. See, Stravinsky didn't just use rhythm as a background beat. Nope. He used it like a weapon. You know how most music has a pretty steady, predictable pulse? Like 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, Stravinsky took that and just threw it out the window. He used something called syncopation, which means he was hammering the accents on all the wrong beats. It's totally disorienting, and it's on purpose. Imagine trying to dance to that. It's designed to make you feel off balance, to kind of knock you sideways with this powerful, lurching feeling. And if that wasn't enough to throw you off, he then started layering completely different, conflicting rhythms right on top of each other. It's a technique called polyrhythms. So you might have one section of the orchestra playing in a rhythm of 3, while another part is playing in 5 at the same time. It creates this incredible sense of organized chaos. It's not just random noise, it's this incredibly complex, controlled collision of different beats. Okay, so we've talked about the rhythm, but beyond that, the actual sound of the orchestra was totally alien to people's ears back then. Stravinsky wasn't just coming up with new melodies. He was inventing completely new textures, new colors with the instruments. And his ambition was just massive. He called for one of the biggest orchestras ever put together for a ballet. We're talking over 100 musicians. He packed it with extra brass and percussion, like 8 horns and 5 trumpets. And the point wasn't just to be loud. The goal was to create a sound that felt brutal, even overwhelming. And if you were hoping for those beautiful, long, flowing melodies, forget about it. Stravinsky built his music out of what you could call scraps of melody. He took these short, jagged little pieces, a lot of them inspired by old folk tunes, and just repeated them over and over again. They don't develop in that classic, elegant way. They just show up, smash into each other, and then vanish. The opening of the ballet is the perfect example of this. It starts with just one instrument, a lone bassoon. playing in a register that's way, way higher than it's comfortable with. It sounds strained, almost alien. Then another instrument comes in, then another, and another. And it just keeps building until you get this swarm of sound. It's like watching a single cell multiply and grow into this complex, chaotic, living thing. So, okay, we've got a full-on riot, a scandalous failure. You'd think, well, that's the end of that story. But what's so amazing is that this is actually just the beginning of the ballet's second life.
I mean, look at this timeline. This has to be one of the fastest comebacks in music history. Less than a year after the riot, they performed the music again. But this time, it was just a concert. No dancers, none of the shocking choreography. And the reaction? The complete opposite. A huge ovation. Once you took away the visuals that freaked everyone out, the audience could finally hear the music for the masterpiece it truly was. Its entire reputation was transformed practically overnight. And that, right there, is the real legacy of this piece. The Rite of Spring wasn't just some noisy ballet that caused a fuss. It was a line in the sand. It basically helped kickstart the entire modern era of music. It showed a whole new generation of composers that, hey, harsh sounds, violent rhythms, and raw power, that stuff can be just as expressive as a pretty melody. It opened up a whole new world.
Which kind of leaves us with this one last fascinating question to chew on. Did the riot actually help make it a masterpiece? You have to wonder, was the scandal a happy accident? Did all that craziness, that notoriety from the first night, guarantee that the Rite of Spring would never, ever be forgotten? That it would go down in history not just as music, but as a legendary event? Definitely something to think about.